everybody. That was a bit high-pitched, wasn't it? Hello, everybody. Oh, okay. Nice to see you all. So, here is what we're going to be talking about. What is it that 10% of leaders know about performance that the rest of us have a tendency to miss? There's something that 10%, let's call them the outliers, 10% of leaders know about human performance, about the human dimension, that the rest of us kind of know, but we sort of keep missing it. And there are implications for the fact that we miss it or we don't quite understand it. So I want to talk about what that 10% know. By the way, that 10% wasn't just plucked out of thin air. It's a study that I did with hundreds and hundreds of leaders and workers, and I'll be sharing some of the highlights of the research to really help to shine a light on this for you. Why is a bad day at work like being afraid of bridges? Not going to say anything more about that at the moment. Oh. And how and why instant perspective and clarity is always available to you in any situation without you having to effort and do stuff in order to get it. It's an undoing rather than a doing, because we have way too much to do already. So I'm here to take a load off your mind so that you can see that there is a more effortless way for us to experience true leadership without having to employ lots of processes and techniques and strategies. Because I don't know about you, but I'm inundated with information. So anything that can lighten the load, I'm very appreciative of. So I want to start with this. I want to start with talking about fleas. Why, you say? Why fleas? Some of you may have heard this before, but if you take a jar and put some fleas in a jar, and you close the lid, the fleas jump up and they hit their little flea heads, poor little mites, or fleas as they are. What happens if you take the lid off of the jar, let's say after a couple of minutes? They keep on jumping to hit the lid and it's not there. It's really interesting to watch this. They actually stop trying to get out. They jump only as high as the lid. It's the furthest they go. Why? Why is that a bit like the human condition? Yeah. The conditioning happens very, very quickly, and we have a lot of conditioning that we don't realize we have. Some of it's useful. I don't want to have to keep learning to stop at traffic lights every time I take my car out. Some of it's useful. I don't want to put my hand in a hot flame. I want to have that conditioning. It's useful. But there's a lot of other conditioning that we have which we don't realize, and it's not terribly helpful. So my premise for you today is that thought or thinking is the lid for us. It's the proverbial human condition lid. It's invisible, we don't really understand it fully, but thinking, thought, and understanding how thought works, it is the lid. It's either the thing that constrains us, or it's the thing that liberates and empowers us. Our understanding of it is what dictates which direction that goes in. So today I want us to just shine a light on just one thing about how the mind works, just one thing. I'm a one-trick pony today, that's it. I also want to say that and this is not me just plugging my book, although it will sound like it is. Okay, I'm plugging my book. I only have 45 minutes with you. The deeper sort of explanations and the deeper research and the science behind this is in my book. And my partner's agreed that I can give it to you for, a $5 or something. It's not free, though. Business partner over there, I have to listen to him. So before we go further, I want to ask you just to consider a couple of questions for yourself. And you may have already considered some of these questions today, but just to take a moment to reflect on what is the one, just one, I mean maybe two or three, but what's one really significant change that you could make or goal that you could achieve? Some kind of milestone that you could accomplish that would have the single biggest impact on the growth of your business or on your own potential being fulfilled, even more than it is now, right? Because there's always more, isn't there? There's always more to learn, there's always more to discover. So I just want you to just consider that question for yourself for a moment. So here's the next question for you as a build on that. What's the single most important leadership quality? So you have, I'm sure, leadership qualities in abundance, and there are obviously also leadership qualities that you really favor in other people and admire in other people. But what is the single most important leadership quality that will best support you in accomplishing that goal or making that change? Or in fact, any of the goals or changes that you're looking to create over the next year, 2 years, 3 years. But what's the single most important leadership quality? I'm quite keen to hear what pops to mind when you think about that question. Could you shout out some leadership qualities that...
Paying attention.
Paying attention. Thank you. Are you paying attention to me? Thank you very much. I'm paying attention to you. You're paying attention to me. Anything else? So attention. Listening. Did someone say being receptive? Yes. What else? Pardon? Focus.
Being more mindful of what you're doing.
Being more mindful.
So rather than just taking decisions, being actually
Sort of more present. Yeah, present, mindful, yeah. Anything else? Asking the right questions, yeah, that's definitely helps. Definitely an important one. What else? Teamwork.
Being brave enough to try something difficult.
Yeah, being brave. Yeah. Anything else? Passion. Anything else that you haven't heard, but for you is like the defining one that you haven't heard yet, but you've written down or thought of?
Resilience.
Sorry?
Vision.
Hang on, who said resilience? Yeah, so resilience, and the next one?
Vision.
Vision. Yeah. Okay. We'll hold that to one side for a second, because I want to ask you a slightly different question. And this is kind of a deep question, really. It's a quite a reflective question. If you deeply knew, I mean really, really knew, like it was an absolute fact, like you know your name, you know where you live. If you really deeply knew that you will always be okay, and that you would always and can always thrive and flourish, regardless of circumstances, regardless of the past, regardless of your future potential results, how would knowing this now, really knowing this now, not intellectually knowing it, but really viscerally getting it, knowing it, how would knowing that help you in your day-to-day and your personal and professional life? I just want you to consider that question. It's an important question.
Take more risks.
Oh, I didn't even have to ask, there it was. So say that again, please.
Take more risks.
I've got really bad eyesight because I can hear the voice, but I can't see where it's coming from. Okay, you take more risks.
Be more confident.
You be more confident. Anything else that comes to mind, like if you really knew this as an absolute given? Say that again. You'd be at peace. You'd be at peace. That's beautiful. What else?
Wouldn't help, nothing to fight for.
Say that louder.
Wouldn't help because there's nothing to fight for.
Oh, you wouldn't see that as helpful because there'd be nothing to fight for. Okay, what else? Any other thoughts about what that would do for you?
Give more. Give more.
You'd give more. That's really interesting. You'd give more. You'd be at peace. I understand what you're saying about, well, what's there to really drive for, to strive for? Because there's that kind of tension, that dissonance, that tension can be helpful sometimes. We think it can to drive us forwards. Okay, so bear those answers in mind because they're really, really interesting given what we're going to be talking about. So, I would say that there is something fundamental about how our minds work that we don't fully understand. And when we see through the misunderstanding, It makes everything that you just described available without having to work at it. Now, I want to give an example of, I said to you why being unhappy at work is a bit like being afraid of bridges. Here's the example. This was a Darren Brown television program, Faith or Fear, you might have seen it, where they had people who had phobias, and they were given what they were told was a phobic pill, a new remedy to cure them of their fear. So this guy, Dan, took his tablet, and 3 days later, and this guy didn't cross any bridges. He had a real fear of heights and bridges, so he wouldn't even cross the lowest bridge. 3 days later, after taking what he thought was a fear-reducing drug, it was all set up very authentically. There was a clinician there with a white coat, and if you saw it, you would have seen it was all done very, very well. And what was really interesting was 3 days later, Darren took him up onto a bridge, and he was on the highest, I don't know if you can see, because I took some of the pictures out, but it's a massive, massive drop. Even I don't think I'd want to stand up on that bridge, to be honest. And what was really interesting was that when he told him, look, actually, you didn't take anything. It was a sugar pill. What do you think now? And he said, it was quite sweet, because he said, well, actually, I feel even better now, because now I know I did it myself. Right? So, and the interesting thing about that conversation was that Darren Brown then said to him, well, you kind of gave yourself permission to make it okay. But if we look across all of the different placebo trials that are done across the world, we see these incredible, incredible results. And we have to ask ourselves, how is it possible that somebody that takes a cornflower pill can then do their best ever time trial on a bike when they've already done their best time trial? So they wouldn't even do 2 in a day, but this was one of the Horizon social experiments for placebo. And they beat their best time, and they thought they were taking a performance-enhancing plant-based pill, and all they took was cornflower. How does somebody that's got a shattered vertebrae go into a situation where she's told she may have a procedure, an operation, but she might not, and she doesn't have the procedure, but 3 days later she's out on the golf course playing golf, and she hasn't played for 5 years. She didn't have the procedure. How does that happen? Ellen Langer, Professor Ellen Langer, Harvard, in the 80s, did this really, really exciting, interesting study where she took a bunch of elderly people who had all kinds of vision, different kinds of impairments, walking with sticks. There was just age, wear and tear. And she put them in an environment where they were 50 years younger, the music, the wallpaper, the furniture. They dropped them off on a coach and said, make your own way in. We're not even going to help you. You've got to take your clothes in yourself. You are now on your own. And the most incredible results, she wanted to see whether perception had an impact on the aging process. And the results were incredible. They saw change, because they did pre and post testing, and they saw changes in eyesight, changes in blood pressure, changes in heart rate. One guy didn't need his stick at the end. I think his wife thought, you've been having me on for a few years. Yeah, I've been busy making you dinners and looking after you, and all the time you could walk without a stick. But actually it was a really, really profound set of findings. Now, you've got to ask yourself, because nobody talks about this when they talk about placebo. They don't say, well, what actually is placebo? Well, they say placebo is a sugar pill. But placebo is not a sugar pill, is it? What is placebo, really? Changing your mindset. Placebo is thought. The guy thought, I can do this. I can go over a bridge. I've taken something. He had a change in thinking. That's all that happened. And that can change people's entire neurology, physiology, and we see all kinds of incredible results. So there's something really important about this. So the nice thing about this as well was that afterwards he said, oh, by the way, we told you it was called Rumudin, which is an anagram for your mind. So it was quite clever at the end. It's really worth watching if you get a chance to sort of see it on Catch Up or somewhere. So look, here's the thing. You talked about a bunch of things earlier about the qualities that would really help you even more in your pursuit of excellence and the growth of your business and what you're trying to achieve. Well, these are some of the qualities that leaders are constantly talking to me about when we go in and work with companies. You know, oh, I wish this person would just be a bit more humble. I wish they would be less needing to be right all the time. Or I wish there was a better sense of connection with people. I wish our relationships were better. I wish we had more clarity. You know, people are so distracted and busy-minded. These are the kinds of things we hear every day, and I'm sure that you hear these every day too in different areas of your life and your work life. Engagement, motivation. I wish people would just be more self-motivated. We have to work so hard to get people to where we want to get to. There must be an easier way. Or resilience. How can we help people to ride the waves of life and bounce back more quickly? You know, why is it that some people, after a setback or a disappointment, they kind of wallow in self-pity for hours, and they need to go to the pub, and they need to phone everyone, and they need to, you know, talk about it, and then when they get home, they can't talk to their wife because they need some downtime. You know, at the extreme, this is the kind of stuff that we're up against as human beings. But how is it that other people can be up against the same kind of situation or challenge, and yet they get back on the horse, back in the saddle really quickly? What's the defining difference between the person that wallows and the person that just gets on with it? There's something that we're missing when we're looking at performance, that 10% of people know and the rest of us keep missing. Purpose. How do we keep a sense of direction and intention? You know, we all know that having a sense of direction is important. Now, here's the thing that I think is fabulous about this, because there was a time in the old days where I would have had a strategy for each of those. I would have given you a strategy, or I would have given you some ideas for how we can address each of these things. But what I started to see over the last 9 or 10 years was that these are things: presence, humility, purpose, engagement, resilience, accountability, clarity, connection. These are things that we do naturally when our mind is unburdened. When your mind is free and clear and you're not full of insecurities and doubts and hesitation and busyness and distraction, you are nice. You are, aren't you? I'm much nicer when I'm not full of my own crap. I'm a much nicer person. Ask my partner, he's somewhere in the room. Ask him what I'm like when I'm stressy. Ask him if I'm nice to be around. He's probably left because he's like, oh God, I don't want to talk about me. When people's minds are free and clear, they tend to think the right things and do the right things. We have common sense and wisdom in abundance. That's why we keep buying the next great how to do it book, because it doesn't quite meet the mark, so I'll get the next. This must be the magic bullet. If the answers were in the advice, if the answers were in the strategies, why do we keep needing more of them? Why have people got stacks of personal development books? And then the next Paul McKenna one comes out. Do love you, Paul, so this is not dissing you. But the next Paul McKenna book comes out. Got to get that one too. I Can Make You Rich. Oh, yes. I want to write I Can Make You Miserable. That's going to be my next book. I'm actually not joking. I want to write that book. I know how we can make ourselves miserable. So look, there's an easier way. The question is not, here's the fundamental premise here. The question is not, how do I become a better leader? How do I get more resilience? How do I be more confident? How can I be more courageous? Wrong question. Wrong question. The question is, what is it I need to know? Or what is the thing that gets in the way of me being who I already am? What gets in the way of me being that naturally connecting, humble, caring, compassionate, visionary, confident, courageous, resilient person? Because my suggestion is there's one thing that gets in the way of all of that. And if we can see and understand what that one thing is, we will experience all of these in abundance, more consistently, without effort. Who likes the sound of that? Only me then. Really? If you don't want it, then I'll just go for lunch early. It's fine. I don't mind. But really, there's an important point here. So look, here's the thing. I want to ask you a quick question. Fact versus fiction. I would like you, on your table, you'll have 1 minute to do this, quick fire. I want you to come up with 2 facts about how the world works. 2 facts. They have to be undeniably true facts about how the world works. Not open to suggestion, possibly, maybe, but absolute true facts about how the world works. That's what you're going to do on your table. And then, for each fact, you're going to generate one idea that is loosely, tenuously, somehow linked to that fact. So here's an example. Okay, the Earth orbits the sun. Fact? Yes? Nod. This is yes. Yeah? So good, I'm pleased that's a fact because it's the only one I've got. Okay, so an idea loosely related to that fact would be, oh, I feel happy when it's sunny. There we go. There's a loose idea related, an idea related loosely to the fact. So you've got 1 minute now to come up with 2 undeniable facts and an idea that relates to each of them. Okay, go. I need a watch. It's, oh, what time have I, when do I finish? When do I start? Oh, man. Must be a fact, and then an idea. Okay. All right, I'd love to hear, I just want to hear a couple of examples. So shout out a fact for me.
It's warmer at the equator, and I love going on holiday in the Mediterranean.
So it's warmer on the equator. That's a fact, right? Undeniable. Yes. Okay. And you love going on holiday?
In the Mediterranean.
In the Mediterranean. Okay. Another one, please.
There isn't anybody who actually knows what the effects of Brexit are going to be.
Oh, gosh. Now, is that an undeniable truth? Yes, it is. Okay. And what's the idea that's related tenuously to that?
Just listen to the politicians.
Or not, as the case may be. Okay, another one, please.
Most of the Earth is water, and it seems to rain more now than it used to.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. See. Can you hear the difference between a rock-solid, undeniable truth, as close as we can get as human beings, and then kind of the other stuff? Give me another one.
The body needs food and drink to survive. Fiction is that my brain doesn't work when it's nearly lunchtime.
One more. I like these. Yeah? What goes up must come down. Yes, the law of gravity. Yeah, well, that's kind of true, isn't it? Now, here's the point. There are facts about how life works. There are facts. There are absolute facts. And then there's fiction. There's the stuff we make up. And I would like to suggest, although you might not like this, that most of what we think is fiction, and there's a little bit of fact. And I want to look at what the facts are of the human condition and what the facts are of how the mind works. But there's an important point here. If we as human beings, as leaders, as parents, as partners, if we can learn to distinguish between fact and fiction when it comes to the mind, we'll be a lot better off. We're still going to create lots of fiction, no problem. I've got loads of ideas, and we'll all have loads of ideas. But to understand that they're made up is really helpful. It's helpful to know what's real and what isn't, what's made up, what's up for grabs, and what's rigid and undeniable. Because we live most of our lives like everything we think is fact and undeniable. And it causes a lot of problems for humanity, let alone just in the boardroom or in teamwork. So here are some facts, okay? And I talk about this in the book, so a lot of this is linked to the book as well, so you'll see more about this with the book. So we used to think that we lived in an Earth-centered solar system. There was a time we thought the Earth was Earth-centered. We were a bit arrogant. We thought that we were in the middle and everything was moving around us and we just stood still. And in fact, we orbit the sun and we are spinning, and it doesn't feel like we're spinning, because here we are, and it seems really still, doesn't it? But we are racing around at some unbelievable velocity. But you wouldn't know it with the naked eye. You wouldn't know that was true, but it is true. We know it's a fact. It doesn't feel like it's spinning. It doesn't look like it's spinning, but we know that it is. And sometimes when we stop just to consider that, it's kind of amazing, really. We didn't understand about germs and bacteria. We passed scalpels from one part of hospital to another hospital. We didn't understand about the importance of sanitary conditions. We didn't understand, and we pushed back and we pushed back, even when people made incredible discoveries. We're not very good listeners. No, that can't be true. Show me the evidence. And then eventually, we learned through the great minds that we've had, we learned that bacteria, not miasma, is the cause of disease. I mean, they thought there were bad smells were the cause of disease, and in a way it was, because bad smells come from, if you've got disease, you inherently get bad smells, but causation is not the same as correlation. So we also thought it was a flat Earth, and we have flat Earth society now. Amazing, the people will still absolutely go to court and say it's a flat Earth. Now, if it was a flat Earth, what would the implications be? If you were living in a world where the Earth was flat, what would the implications be? Yeah, you fall off the edge. Yeah, there'd be lots of new jobs like lookout boats saying, hey, don't get too close to the edge. There'd be a whole industry created. But it was never flat. We just thought it was, and so we lived our lives in accordance with our belief system, i.e. that the world was flat. So whatever our worldview is, however we think the world works, we are going to live, we are going to think, we're going to behave, we're going to operate from the understanding we have, because that's all we've got. We're always doing the best we can, given the thinking that we have, given the understanding that we have in any given moment. That's what we've got. All of us, every single one of us, is the same in that regard. There we go. That's what we thought would happen. Of course it didn't, because it was never true. But it stopped people, it limited people. It limited people's travel, it limited their perspective. Their perspective was narrowed and minimized because of the understanding they had, or we could say the misunderstanding that they had. So we have evolved, we've really evolved, we've learned a lot, we've had incredible discoveries, we have incredible minds that teach us and show us and uncover unbelievable discoveries. But I would say that we're still a little bit in the dark ages in one respect, in terms of how the mind works. Kim talked about neuroscience. There's been some incredible discoveries. Neuroplasticity, I mean, it's amazing what we're learning now about the brain. And there's still a fundamental misunderstanding, which I want to show you through some of my research to see what you think about this. So I asked about 700 workers and leaders from a 2012, 13, 14 study. And I wanted to shine a light on, do people really understand the role and nature of thought, thinking, state of mind in our performance at work? Do we really understand how important it is? Or is it really off the radar? And if it's off the radar, then it really explains some of the things that we see going on in businesses and some of the things we can see going on in teams and organizations. So I asked people, how important is clarity of mind or state of mind for leadership performance, for general performance? So who would expect it to be quite high, quite a high number? Yeah, like 81% said it's crucial. It gave it an 8 to 10. It's absolutely crucial. Of course we know. We all sitting here know that our own mindset and clarity of mind is really important. But the question is, do we really understand what drives it? Do we understand how we get to clarity or how we get perspective faster than we do? I also ask people, so this question, I said, well, what governs your state of mind? Now just give me a few thoughts on what governs your state of mind. So look, we all know that our state of mind peaks and troughs. It waxes and wanes. Sometimes we're feeling really motivated and inspired, and other times, we quite happily stay in bed and we feel like we've got no vision at all. We just can't even think clearly. We all experience those ups and downs. Sometimes they're sort of swinging ups and downs, and sometimes they're just the day-to-day kind of, I'm just feeling a bit flat at the moment, and other times we're feeling great. What is it that accounts for those shifts and changes? This is what I asked leaders and workers. What do you think some of the answers were? What accounts for the shifts and changes of your own state of clarity, your own feeling state, your own state of mind? Sleep? The environment, shout out. Your home life. Pardon? Oh, yeah, good. What else? Did you say your thoughts? Well, yes, now that's an interesting one, because that was very low down on the list. Very low down on the list. Any more? How well you do? Like, if you feel like you've done really well, you feel great, and if you feel like, you haven't, then, right? Okay. Anything else? Other people, yeah. Yeah, other people. If it wasn't for other people, I'd be fine. We just need to have no teams, no people, and we'd just do really, really well, wouldn't we? We'd just be on our own and we'd be fine. I also ask, when you don't perform to the best of your ability, what's the reason? What would you expect to be the number one answer? Any ideas? I'm going to show you in a second, because I've only got 10 minutes left, so I've got to go really fast. Time. Well, actually, the number one reason was if I'm feeling stressed, anxious, or worried about something. That was the number one reason. So I then said, okay, well, when you're feeling stressed, anxious, or worried about something, what's the primary cause? Because this is all about understanding cause-effect. If we understand what the cause of our performance is, what the cause of our leadership is, we don't start looking in the wrong direction to fix it. Because we understand what the cause is, right? Fair enough? We need to know the root cause. So I said, what's the primary cause? What do you think's at the top of the list? Self-talk. No. That was at the bottom of the list. Yes. Huh? From the study. Yeah. Okay, here's what we got. Workload, number 1. Pressure of deadlines, number 2. Not enough time, number 3. But look at this. This is what was really interesting to me. My own thinking or mindset was almost at the bottom of the list. Now, what's the implication if you've got, let's say you've got people in your company or your colleagues, what's the implication if thinking is just not visible to people as an aspect of their experience of workload, pressure of deadlines, not enough time? What's the implication? Yeah. And sorry? Yeah, we are addressing the wrong problems. Because what we think are the problems are actually a symptom of a fundamental misunderstanding about thinking, about thought, about the role that thinking has in our experience. So you have to ask the question, how does workload, and the thing is, this is everywhere. This is in all the definitions of stress. This is in all of the big reports. So what I'm saying, in some ways, flies in the face of a lot of those reports and things. But how does workload have the power, in and of itself, to make us feel stressed? How? I have clients that come to me and say, oh, my to-do list is really stressing me out. How does a to-do list, words on paper, a list on a screen, how does it have the power? Someone needs to tell me how it works. Pardon? Yeah, we have to put thought back into the equation. We have to see that workload can't do anything to us. No, I'm not saying that workload isn't an issue. I've got lots of companies that I work with where the workload is way too much. Definitely. I'm not saying that there aren't issues to be resolved. But our experience, our moment-to-moment experience, our clarity, our state of mind is not dictated to by workload, by pressures of deadlines or not enough time. We can only experience time, workload, and deadlines through our thinking. It's the only way we can experience anything. Right now, your experience of this conversation, your experience of this entire day, is going to be coming to you virtue of your thinking, moment to moment to moment. If you're bored, that's your thinking. Sorry, I'm not absolving myself of responsibility, but I'm just talking about this is how it works. If I find something boring, I'm having boring thoughts. I'm sitting there thinking, oh God, when's this going to end? When's lunch? What? That's me, I'm doing that. That's creating my feelings of boredom. If I feel really engaged, or if you feel really engaged, it's because you're having thoughts that are making you feel engaged. It's just, that's how the system works. Like flat Earth, round Earth. Where does our experience come from? Does it come from outside of us? Does it come from inside of us? We still live in a world where we think our experience, our feelings, our clarity, our confidence is really ultimately generated from somewhere out there. If only I could get that situation right, then I could feel better. If only they would stop behaving like an arse, then I could relax. If only that person would leave, then I could enjoy my job. If only they would stop making changes, then I could feel at peace in myself. We're constantly relegating how we're feeling in the moment to all of these other things that are going on. Now, what I'm not saying is, I absolutely am not saying that there aren't very challenging situations that we face every day in our professional and personal lives. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is, our ability to lead, to really lead with humility, courage, resilience, connection, all of that good stuff, is going to come from our having absolute clarity and perspective in the moment. Otherwise, how can we make the right decisions? How can we know what the right conversation is? All we're going to end up doing is pointing at things that we think are the problem, when actually all we need to see is, where do I think my experience is coming from right now? Where do I think my feelings are coming from right now? I ask people, when you're having a bad day, what do you attribute that to? That's someone having a bad day. Because his jam came out of his donut. First world problem, isn't it, really? Now look at this. As leaders, this should be really interesting for us. At the top of the list of a bad day, if I've had a negative encounter with a colleague or manager, relationships, as Kim said earlier, are profoundly important to people. Connection is everything. Relationships are terribly important. But when we think someone else has the power to make us feel a particular way, that is what ruins relationships. That's part of the problem of relationships. If I think you have the power to make me feel upset, or to take away my clarity, or to take away my confidence, then I'm either going to withdraw from you, I'm going to try and manipulate you, I'm going to be approval-seeking and needy with you because you give me my confidence. Do you see the logic here? When we think that it works the way that it doesn't, it gets us into trouble. Relationships are fine when people understand where their own feelings of confidence, clarity, and security come from. Relationships, we just do fine. We really do. We are naturally always already connected. We cannot not be connected. At the most fundamental essence, we are already connected. The only thing that gives us a feeling of disconnection is this, and a misunderstanding about where our feelings are coming from. That's it. That's it. It's the primary cause is a misunderstanding. And when we see through that, so many issues get sorted out in its wake. It's unbelievable. I remember clients saying to me, this sounds a bit like a panacea. And then 6 months later, he went, it's kind of a panacea. Because he saw that all these different things started shifting. Half of them we hadn't even expected or put on the plan, like people's relationships at home getting better. So I said to one of my clients, I think I'm going to charge you a bit more because we're adding a bit of extra value here with, relationships at home. But when you see something fundamental about how the mind works, when you start to really understand the role that thinking is playing moment to moment to moment, that it's always playing. When thought becomes more visible in your experience, you will stop looking outside of yourself to resolve something that isn't outside. You will stop trying to fix problems out there because they're not the problem. You will have to deal with stuff out there, absolutely. But you first got to have clarity and perspective. And if I think that my upset, my clarity, my confidence, or my resilience can be taken away or given to me by a situation, a circumstance, or the past, I am robbing myself of my clarity and perspective. I have a lack of perspective. That's the one thing I've learned that I know that really helps me out. When I'm feeling really spun out, I have to ask myself the question, where do I think my feelings are coming from right now? And you can bet your bottom dollar, I've actually never said that before, but it just came out. You can bet your something English that I'll be blaming my partner or the weather or the fact that I left a handout on my printer in the office and now I'm going to be late. It'll look like it's a whole host of circumstantial things, but my thinking will be utterly invisible to me as the cause of my feelings of stress. Utterly invisible, because it is invisible. It's like water for fish. Like thought for us is like what water is to fish. They live and breathe in water. They don't. I've never asked a fish, but I would consider that they wouldn't distinguish themselves as separate somehow from the water. They're just in it all the time. Well, we're in thought, living it, breathing it, swimming in it. We're living in thought-created experience, moment to moment to moment, and we don't realize it. So the performance cycle. It's really interesting. If you look at that and you think, okay, there's thought creates feeling. That's the system. Thought creates feeling. Thought creates feeling. Thought, feeling, thought, feeling. We're in a thought-feeling experience moment to moment to moment. We walk around in the feelings that thought is giving us right now as you sit here. As you sit here, try and think about something that irritates you or something you don't like or a person that you don't like, and try and have a happy feeling while you're thinking that thought. Do it now. Try it. Thought experiment. Think about something you don't like and then try and have a happy thought. Do it the other way around. It doesn't work. Think about something you do really like and then try and have a pissed off feeling or an annoyed feeling while you're thinking it. You just see it doesn't work. It doesn't work. We're constantly living in our moment-to-moment thinking. And this has huge implications on relationships. It has implications on innovation, change. Because when people are struggling in times of change, it looks like the change, the situation, the restructure is the cause of their feelings of upset. The last place we tend to look is that those feelings of insecurity are coming from our own thinking. Now, again, I'm not saying, well, you just turn around to a group and say, hey, look, guys, it's not the change, it's your thinking. I'm not saying that. But when we have some understanding of how thought and feeling and how the whole experience works, we all have more clarity. So it means the people that are orchestrating the changes are better able to move people in a more compassionate direction because we understand what's going on for each other, because we're all in the same system. We're all experiencing the exact same logic playing out in each of us moment to moment to moment. Has profound implications for relationships, because if you look at what happens with human beings and conflict, it's like, well, if you don't think like I think, then there's something wrong here. Or we have diversity training. But actually, diversity is the nature of nature. We will always think differently from each other. Thought will always take form in each of us differently. We will all have different thinking. But we're still all thinkers. We're still the same at that absolute fundamental level. So it doesn't make sense for me to be upset if you don't think like I think, because I'm never going to be able to think like you, and you're never going to be able to think like me. We can come to a common agreement that we have a similar perspective, but we're never going to have the same thinking. So when we just have that on the table as a given, it takes a lot of stuff off the table in terms of trying to resolve difference. It's like, well, we're going to start from a place of difference, because that's how it works. So you don't have to spend time trying to get everyone thinking the same way. It just changes the conversation completely. So, we'll hear people saying, yeah, well, money is important. We think, money. We know that money doesn't make us feel better, necessarily. Sounds like it does, because we all have loads of examples of people who've got loads of money and they're depressed. We go, well, I don't understand why they're depressed. They've got everything. And we know people that have got very little and they feel absolutely fine. In California, they did a study This was really interesting. They did a study because they wanted to prove that people that live in hotter countries are happier. And it was really interesting because in the study, the reporter said, well, it was quite surprising, but actually, people in California aren't the happiest. It's not the happiest state, even though it's the warmest state. It's not the happiest state. And it's like, quelle surprise. Because the weather doesn't really make us happy. Because I sat on a beautiful beach for 3 weeks and cried every day for 3 weeks. Every day. Every day. And it was beautiful. It was white sand and blue sky, and I cried every day. So if it really was the beach, and it really was the weather, and it really was the yoga, and it really was the drink, and it really was my boss giving me praise, and I'm not saying those things aren't important, but we have to understand where our feelings really come from. We've got to understand that the driving force of our experience is thought, and if you want to change behavior, and if you want to grow businesses that flourish, we have to understand what's really driving leadership and performance. We have to see that there is a very, very special effects department. How many times can I say special? There is a special effects department behind the scenes called, the movie maker of the mind. And it looks like life is coming at us, but actually we're living a projection of our thinking moment to moment to moment. We're living a projection of our thinking. That's our thoughts projected out onto this giant canvas called thought. I don't know if you can see that, but when they project images onto buildings? So this is a projection of an image on a building. We're kind of a bit like that. We have a projection, our thoughts come through us, we project them out there, and then we receive them as if they're already out there. So we turn thought into a thing. He's a difficult person, that's a stressful meeting, this is an impossible task. But there is no stressful meeting, there is no impossible task, there is no difficult person. There's a person, there's a meeting, and there's a task. Fact, fiction. I mean, it's really helpful. You can sound quite excited because this is really, really helpful to know. I want to know that most of what I think is fiction because it settles me down. And it stops me being an idiot. And it helps me lose my ego. It gets rid of a lot of stuff that's really unhelpful when we're trying to lead and try and make the world a better place. We have to understand how to get clarity. I love this quote, and we're going to get to a close in a second, so I know I'm out of time. Once you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth. Must be true, because Sherlock Holmes said it, and he's a real person. He is. Andy told me he was a real person. But there's a really profound meaning here. Sometimes it really, really doesn't look like my feelings, how I'm feeling and my state of mind and my clarity is coming from thinking in the moment. It really looks like it's coming from the situation. It really looks like it's coming from the client, the team, the colleague who hasn't delivered. It really looks like it's all of those things. But when you know that your feelings can never, ever, ever be generated by anything other than thought in the moment, you eliminate the impossible. And whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth. So here's the thing. The mind is like the ultimate illusion. It's very clever. It's the ultimate trick of the mind. Thought is incredibly deceptive, beautiful, fantastic, amazing. It gives us our entire human experience. It's unbelievable. I can't even wrap my head around it. But we have to understand that there is a team, there's not a real team, but there is a metaphorical team behind the scenes. There's a system at work behind the mind. And we get to have access and understand it now. This is a kid watching a movie. When I was little, I would watch movies, watch films, and I would get really scared, and my mum would say, look, don't worry, there's a cameraman there, and there's this, that, and the other there. It's just a film, it's just a film. Well, I'm saying, it's just thought. It's just thought. One last thing, okay, because this is helpful. Dashboards. If you think about the reason you have a dashboard on a car, right? It gives you important indicators, signals. It tells you what's going on, right? Imagine if you had a car without a dashboard, without a fuel gauge. Like, how would you know when you're running out of gas, or how would you know when the engine was getting hot? You wouldn't, would you? It would be a bit dangerous. Well, we have the equivalent of a human dashboard, and it's called our emotional system. When you feel something, when I used to feel pissed off or upset or stressed, I used to think it meant there was something wrong out there. Now I know that the first place to look is in here, inside, because I know that where the feelings are coming from cannot be out there, not in the first instance, not without thought being the primary controller of the experience. So when you notice your feeling state changing, or your clarity diminishing, or your perspective going, you know that that's probably just because you've got caught up in a misunderstanding about where your feelings are coming from. I know it sounds really simple, but it is. It's really simple, but deceptive, really deceptive. Oh, that's ice cream. We'll have to save that for next time. You can read about the ice cream in my book, though. So, look, here's the thing. The mind works one way, inside out, okay? Thought creates feeling, which creates perception, which drives behavior, which drives performance. If you want to really impact your businesses, help other people, we have to understand more about how this system works, because that's what gives us ultimate perspective and clarity. Leadership is a state of mind. It's not a set of skills. It is a set of skills, but primarily, leadership is a state of mind. Everyone's a leader, from the playground to the boardroom. And leadership emerges naturally when we have clarity. And the way to have clarity and perspective is to understand how the human operating system works, because that's where we get our ultimate clarity and perspective from. And that's why some of us hate roller coasters, that's me, and other people love them, because the feeling doesn't come from the roller coaster, guys. It doesn't. For those of you that love roller coasters, it comes from inside of you. Thank you.